Welcome to Foundation. For more episodes, check out foundation.kr. Today we're talking to Phil Libin, who is the CEO of Evernote. He talks to us about creating a 100-year startup and the future of document encryption. So I typically like to start at the beginning of a founder's career. Just spend a couple minutes on how you got started in tech. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I was born in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and came to New York with my family when I was 8. Grew up mostly in the Bronx, and then went to Boston for college, for Boston University, and started a couple of companies over there before I realized that the right place to be was here.
Were you a geek back then? Like, were you into tech back in the day?
Yeah, I was a super geek.
How early are we talking? Like bulletin board days, dial-up modems, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I think I learned to program on an Apple II using Logo. I think probably is the first programming language with Turtle graphics, and then just. Yeah, ever since I saved up my money for for an Atari 800 was my first computer I owned, and by high school I was already so uncool by high school that this is a true story, that my high school's chess team would not hang out with me because I was.
Wow, that's pretty geeky.
Yeah. But look who's laughing now, chess team.
So
what are those guys up to now, huh?
Good question.
The chess jocks. They got nothing.
Did you study computer science in school, or?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I studied.
So you got your degree in CS, and.
No, whoa! No one said anything about a degree.
Interesting. You're in one of those. I'm one of those as well.
Yeah, I dropped out with one class left from BU. I had 4 credits left, and I dropped out because I was an idiot. But I think I had some kind of a fight with the administration over something. I don't even remember, but I'm sure it was like something financial, and I just remember just like storming out, even though I had 4 credits left. I just left. But it was a good program. It was a good education. I'm glad I went through with it, and I was kind of stupid for dropping out of it.
What was your first startup?
First startup that I'm willing to talk about was
now give me the one that you can't talk about. There's always one. I had Ev Williams on Foundation last week, and he made VHS tapes teaching people how to use the internet. So it was, yeah. And I actually have a clip of that I think we're going to put in the episode, which is
he the please buy my product
Yeah,
guy?
Exactly. Yeah, he was one of those guys.
Let's see. No, the very first company was, I started in high school, and I was selling, we were selling PC clones. So we would buy PC parts from Taiwan and assemble them. It was basically like Dell. We were just like Dell. So we were, yeah. But I sold that company. That was actually my first exit.
How old were you when you started that?
16, 17.
Wow.
But I sold my share in it for $500. So.
Nice.
Yeah, 500 big ones.
Awesome. That's when you started angel investing off those funds.
Exactly. Lost it all instantly.
Yeah. So you always knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur, basically. Like, it was kind of something that was in your DNA. Like, you just enjoyed starting companies.
No, I don't. I never considered myself an entrepreneur. It always to me, it always felt like failing. Like my life progression, literally, it always felt like I was just like, I couldn't get a real job. I couldn't, get a degree. I couldn't be good at the stuff I was supposed to be good at. And so it really, I just felt like I was taking sort of I was always on the branch I was there because I couldn't do something real. And it took a long time for me to realize that, that's the branch for me. I never aspired to it. I always tried to be like a real engineer, at a real company, except that was, that didn't take.
And so you basically, because you didn't have the degree, you think it kind of forced you into this mode of having to fend for yourself, basically?
Yeah, I was working full time in college, and I was making pretty good money. I was programming, I was consulting. In fact, I had this whole plan worked out where I was gonna after college, I was gonna buy a motorcycle, and a motorcycle jacket, and I was gonna ride around the country, just sort of as a free roaming motorcycle guy, and whenever I would run out of money, I would just call an agency, and I would get a programming gig somewhere for a couple of weeks. I would ride the motorcycle.
This is the plan, or you actually did this?
This was the plan.
Okay.
I had this all worked out, and so I would go to a particular city. I would work for a couple of weeks, fixing someone's stupid database. Then I would get back on the motorcycle and ride it around again. And I got pretty far on this plan. I got as far as getting my motorcycle license.
The jacket.
I didn't. I almost got the motorcycle jacket, but then I met this girl who's now my wife, and she kind of talked me out of it, and the whole plan down the toilet.
That's a good story, though.
Yeah.
At least you met your wife.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Evernote. Talk to me about what were you doing before Evernote, and then how did you get this idea to start the company?
Well, I started, I was in Boston, and I started 2 companies in Boston with college friends of mine. The first one was Engine 5, because there was originally going to be 5 of us, but then 2 chickened out, but we already had the domain name. So, and that was in '97. We were doing e-commerce programming, and we were all engineers, so we didn't know anything about. We literally didn't know that there was such a thing called investors. We were not familiar with the concept that other people give you money to start your company. We were like, well, if you're going to start a company, I guess you just have to be profitable from the beginning. So, but luckily this was '97, and if you knew how to program, people would just shovel money at you. And so we just showed up one day and started writing e-commerce stuff, and people
So
started
you were
paying
still in
us.
Boston at the time?
We were in Boston,
Okay.
yeah. And then we sold that company in 2000.
Good exit? $500, $700?
Yeah, it was like 26 million.
Wow.
And with no investors, which was cool. And the best part of that is the company that bought us in 2000. It was right at the height. It was like a January 2000. It was like the best timing imaginable.
This wasn't a stock purchase, I hope, in 2000.
It was half cash, half stock.
Okay.
But then, this is the best part. They said it was a company called Vignette bought us, which is a big, content management company back at the time in Austin. And they said, we have to do this deal really quickly, so we don't really have time for due diligence. So we're going to have to take 25% of the value in cash and put it in escrow for 2 years, just in case there's some claims against you. We were like, that's bullshit. That's our money. Give me our money right away. And they're like, nope. We have to take this 25% in escrow. And we finally said, okay, fine. And then 2 years later, the 75% that we got, we immediately plowed back into the NASDAQ, and so that went to zero. But then there was still this 25% sitting in escrow, earning 3% a year. Yeah, and we were like, investment geniuses.
Yeah, amazing.
And so, the best thing that ever happened to us was that adults said, you can't have this money for 2 years.
Right.
And put it somewhere.
That's awesome. So how did you end up with Evernote? Where did that idea come from? Did you take some time off?
No, definitely no time off.
Thing?
So after we got out of Vignette, we started another company called Core Street, which was a security company, MIT spinoff, doing crypto stuff for banks and governments. And we did that in a month after September 11th. So that was October 11th of 2001. We started that company because I think back then, everyone felt like you wanted to do something more substantive. That was kind of the common feeling. We were like, this other stuff we were doing, e-commerce, who really cares? We want to do something meaningful. So we started the security company, and that was fine, except we were making products for governments and for banks, and so it was interesting, but not really. It was super boring. And then we sold that, and by the time it came time to do the third one, we were like, okay, look, we've done and sold 2 companies, but they were never for us.
Venture money for that last company?
For the second one we did.
Okay,
yeah.
So that was your first time raising venture?
First time raising venture.
What was that like for you? Did you do it out in Boston, or did you come out in the Bay Area?
We came to the Bay Area, but we were sent back. So it was Boston, and
they all said no.
Yeah, they all said no. But we got investment from Boston and from New York and DC. It was a government-focused thing, so it was actually some DC stuff,
Right.
and it was just it was not fun. I mean, anything that involves selling stuff to the Pentagon.
Yeah.
At one point, I realized what percentage of my brain was occupied by Department of Defense procurement timetables and procedures.
Right.
And I'm like, that's bullshit.
That sounds horrible.
This part of my brain needs to be full of Simpsons quotes, and instead I know about DoD purchasing. So
Right.
The whole impetus behind Evernote is we said the first 2 companies weren't for us. We killed ourselves to make them, and it was nice that we had decent exits, but the products weren't for us, and the companies weren't for us. So the third time around, let's not be idiots about this. Let's just let's build only the products that we want to use, and let's build a company that we want to keep. So we said, 100-year startup, only products that we want. And that was the impetus behind it.
Tell me about your 100-year startup, because you recently tweeted that you're 5 years old now?
Today.
And you said you're 5% done.
Mission
with your,
5% accomplished.
Yes.
Yeah. So today we're actually 5 years old. We're 5% into the 100-year plan. I don't know. I guess there's not much to say. I mean, we want to build a 100-year startup.
So what was the initial idea? You were just I've got all these documents sitting on my desk. I need to get these up in the cloud somehow. What?
No.
What kicked it off? What was the thing that?
Well, we thought, okay, we want to build something for us, the founding team,
Sure.
the core team. And so we said, like, what do we do all the time? And we literally sat around thinking, like, well, what do we do all the time? And I said, like, well, I play a lot of video games. Like, we play a lot of games, but we were already having like pretty good experience with games. Like, there's already more great video games than we have time to play with. So like, we didn't feel the need to improve that. Like, all right. Well, we spent a lot of time on social stuff, on Twitter and Facebook and things like that, but that was already felt like a pretty good experience. Like, we didn't really need to improve that. But the stuff that we wanted and we spent a lot of time with that we thought was a terrible experience in 2007 was productivity stuff. Where like every time we like interact with like productivity, it just feels like old and stupid and doesn't quite match our lifestyle anymore. And we really want something to kind of be our external brain, make something to make us smarter. And so that was the thinking. And then we started a team around that. And then I met this other guy, Stepan Pachikov, we were in Boston, and this guy Stepan had another team in California. And he was this genius Russian American inventor, entrepreneur guy. And his team went all the way back to the Apple Newton days. So like they're the guys who worked on the Apple Newton that did like all the handwriting recognition. And they were working on basically the same idea, this idea of giving everyone like a perfect memory. And we joined the two teams in '07. I moved here, and that's kind of how Evernote was born.
I see. How hard is it to do OCR, and how hard was it to actually, did you do it in the cloud from the beginning? Like, was this always about storing and archiving something so it's safe from disaster? And
yeah, we didn't really think about the words cloud. Like that word cloud really only came into being, I think, later. And in fact, I think so at my second company, at Core Street, the security company, it was the co-founder was this. So I have this history of like co-founding companies with like brilliant, academic people. So this time it's Stepan. The previous company was a professor named Silvio Macaulay, who was an MIT cryptography guy, and he was the father of what's known as zero knowledge proofs. So there's this like branch of mathematics and cryptography called zero knowledge proofs, and it's kind of it's very cool. Didn't have anything to do with what we were doing at that company, but just called zero knowledge proofs. And at one point, some of the sales guys in the company like got a hold of this idea that Silvio Macaulay was the father of zero knowledge proofs, and they just started putting that term into all of our materials. They're like, Core Street based on zero knowledge proofs, and I have to keep saying like we have nothing to do with this zero knowledge proofs, but it kept coming up in our marketing materials, and I couldn't figure out why. Like, why do people keep saying this when it's just not true? Like, it sounds cool, but it's not true. And I wound up having to write an email to the whole company that basically said, look, just because it has the word zero knowledge in it doesn't mean that you don't have to know anything to talk about it. Like, doesn't mean that it's about whatever you want it to be. And I think the cloud is the same way. I think because clouds in real life are kind of fuzzy and indistinct, people feel like they don't need to think rigorously when they talk about it, so like people throw out the word cloud about everything, and it's an utterly meaningless concept. Yeah. So I frankly don't know what it means. I think the amount of innovation coming out of a company is like inversely proportional to how often they use the words innovation and cloud.
Yeah, I'm curious about.
And some companies have like departments of cloud innovation. And you're like,
That's how you know.
That's where the real work's happening.
Amazing. So when it comes to storing, organizing, searching our documents, like, where does this go? Where do you see this in the next few years? I mean, is this something where I will eventually be able to search my Amazon receipts? Like, are you going to do partnerships with bigger companies to pull in all of our data?
Yeah, so I think, so from the beginning, we were always about all of your stuff being everywhere, right? So we always said Evernote has to be your external brain. And so just like your brain is kind of with you, we want Evernote to be with you. So it isn't so much about it being in the cloud, it's just, it has to be there when you need it, on all of your local devices if you don't have network access, but also, everywhere else. And I think in the future, I think that the idea of files and the idea of documents is receding, like it's becoming less important. And really to be replaced with a much more direct like insights and knowledge. Like, there's already too many files to deal with. There's already too many documents, too many folders, too many receipts. Like, people don't actually want that, especially when you kind of get into a corporate setting, which is part of what we're focusing on now with Evernote Business. Like, there's already too many files in your company. Like, helping you find files isn't particularly cool, isn't particularly useful. What you really want is you want to know things. You want to be smarter. And so, I think 5 years from now, sure, you'll be able to search your Amazon receipts and all that stuff, but you shouldn't have to think of them as like discrete entities. You should just be like, what are you trying to find out? And then you should know it.
So that's not going to come from me going in and capturing a clip of an Amazon receipt? Like you see that as a partnership type opportunity? Will you be pulling those in automatically in archiving and indexing those, or?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it shouldn't be your job to organize things. Like that should be our job. Like people, I think there's kind of two types of people. There's people who enjoy the act of organizing, right? And there's like maybe 5% of the population who derives pleasure from labeling things, who derive pleasure from like sorting things by order of size or putting things into like different categories or folders. Like that's fine. Those people can use Evernote, and we have lots of ways. If you derive pleasure from manually organizing things, we want to give you a good experience.
Right.
But those people are actually no more productive than people who are lazy slobs like I am, who actually don't care about organizing things, who just want to be organized. And so the goal of the product is you shouldn't have to do anything that you don't want to do. We should do it for you. So yeah, you shouldn't have to worry about clipping things and then tagging them and then saying, these are the folders that it goes into. I should just have the knowledge that I want. So whenever I want to think about something and that knowledge requires me to know what I bought from Amazon 4 years ago, it should just be there. It should just be effortless. We should be effortlessly productive. That's the goal of Evernote, is to make it feel like it's completing your thoughts, it's just making you smarter. We really think of it as a cognitive prosthesis. That's what Evernote is meant to be. It's meant to take your brain, take the ways in which you are currently smart and make it better, like magnify your current natural intelligence. It's augmented intelligence.
Does that eventually span outside of just documents and text? Like, is that something that can flow into videos and pictures and things of that nature?
Yeah, but much more broadly than that, it's also something that flows into, like, it's much more than just about file types. Like, it also has to do with people, and with meetings and with communications. Like, we want to make you smarter about your meetings that you have. We want to make your communication smarter. We want to make your interaction with people smarter. I think a bit too much our industry has been thinking about files and data types, because that's kind of, as engineers, that's what we're trained to think about.
Right.
But that isn't actually the experience you want. For example, like in my company, if I'm looking for, let's say, like we want to do an event. I just came back from Brazil and Chile last week. So we want to do an event in Brazil. And I do some stuff in Evernote, and I'm obviously working on event planning in Brazil. It would be pretty cool if, as part of me doing that, it automatically finds notes that one of my coworkers took about event spaces in Brazil. Like that's fine, but it would be even cooler than that if it just told me who I should talk to at my company about this. Like, I don't even so much want to see the files that they created. I just want to know that, like, oh yeah, Bob's the guy that I should ask right now about doing this in Brazil. So we're trying to take there's way too many files to deal with. We want to take one level up and deal with concepts that your brain is comfortable thinking about. And those concepts are people, places, events, times, communications. Like, files are a construct which are not a natural construct. Like, your 50,000-year-old frozen caveman ancestor did not think about files.
Right.
He thought about, tigers.
How many of those tools do you bake into, or how much of that do you bake into the Evernote app itself, and then how much of that do you build as external applications, and then how much do you empower other people to build these discovery kind of mechanisms? Because right now you have a handful of products that you've built yourself. Do you continue to do that and expand that?
Yeah, I mean, so of those three categories, the first two, there's a balance. So what do we build into kind of a single app versus multiple apps?
Right.
But there is no conflict between those two and the third, which is what do we empower other people to do? We want to empower other people to do as much as absolutely possible. Like, we want people to have, we have about 25,000 third-party developers using the API. We want them to create fantastically great experiences, even if those experiences compete for attention with our own products. Like,
Is that a tricky space to get into, though? I mean, that's similar to what Twitter's done, basically. They initially said, free open API to everyone, come get it. They created a great ecosystem, and then all of a sudden had to lock it down and said, actually, these are really core to my business. I need to own these. Like,
Right.
Do you ever see yourself getting into that type of situation?
no, because I think fundamentally it's a business model question. Like, this is the 100-year startup in practice. So we kind of said, how are we going to build a 100-year startup? We have no idea. But what are the things that are most likely to kill it? And the things that are most likely to kill it are conflicts of interest, like long-term simmering conflicts of interest. So we want to make sure that we align the interest of everyone in the Evernote family, employees and investors and partners and users. That's, for example, why we don't have an indirect business model. Like we're not a data mining company, right? We don't show ads. We don't monetize your data. That helps with users because that's what users want. But it also helps with partners because the reason like Twitter has a conflict with the developers, somebody builds a Twitter app that is a better experience than Twitter's own apps, they're diverting eyeballs from Twitter. So even though people are still using Twitter, they're seeing ads in this app, they're just taking revenue. We don't make money indirectly. We only make money when we give you a good enough experience that you pay for. And the storage is a minor part of it. It's really about, it's about, everything. You need an Evernote subscription. And so what we find is our users that use third-party apps are actually much more profitable for us. They're about 7 times more profitable for us than users that only use our apps because they're more engaged. So if a third-party developer builds a better version of Evernote note-taking client on the iPhone than we have, that's good for us. We benefit. There is no inherent conflict because we don't have an indirect business model. So even though like we give up a whole bunch of short-term revenue because we could be making more money if we were showing ads or doing data mining, it would set up that conflict of interest, and then we would have to worry about, what do we let third-party developers do versus what do we do ourselves? This way, we just say we just want the best experiences, and if the best experience comes from a third-party developer, that's great. That's even better because then we didn't have to pay to develop it.
What do you think about the competitive kind of landscape right now? I mean, forget that I'm wearing a Google T-shirt right now, but Google Drive, Dropbox, others, like, do any of these really bother you? Are you concerned? Do you think there's something that you would like somebody does better than you? I mean, obviously you're not going to get into files, so Dropbox really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so there's a huge amount of competition, infinite. In fact, so we had like the world's worst VC pitch when we were starting out, like 2008. We were raising money kind of at the lowest point, right, of the financial crisis, and I didn't know anything about raising money, and we basically our pitch was, hi, my name is Phil Libin. You've never heard of me. We're gonna make this app that lets you write stuff down on computers or maybe phones, and gonna give it away for free. Please give me $10 million. And so usually that would be enough, and we would be asked to leave. But sometimes out of politeness, you know how you guys work. Like you kind of want to ask some follow-up questions.
Sure.
And so
just to be nice.
Just to be nice. And the most common question, just to justify your being, anyway.
Sure.
And the most common follow-up question was like, well, what's the competition? And I had a great answer. Home run. Knock this one out of the park all the time. I'm like, oh, the competition. Well, every single phone or computer or other device that's ever come out in the history of the universe already has a pretty good free note-taking app. So we already have infinite competition. So like we were born into infinite competition. Mm-hmm. It hasn't gotten worse. It's changed. But we've never thought about it. Like we've never focused on the competition. We've always focused on what can we do together. So like all of our top partners, the 5 companies that bring us the most users that we actively collaborate with to do various awesome things are Google. We're doing a bunch of stuff with Google that's really awesome. Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon. All 5 of those companies have some stuff that competes with us, but it doesn't matter. Those are also our best partners. And out of the 25,000 third-party developers, probably half of them compete with us in some way, but it doesn't matter. I think the mistake that a lot of people make cognitively is the language that's used when talking about business is fundamentally zero-sum. Like, people are trained to talk about business as a zero-sum game, as if it was sports. And I never understood this because, of course, I don't understand sports, as you can tell. So the whole sports analogies never made sense to me. And I think that like being in a startup is less like boxing and more like playing music. Like being in a startup is less like warfare and more like, like art or like literature or like music. Where of course there's other competitors and there's other players and you interact with them but that interaction is not zero sum. Right? Mm-hmm. That interaction is what helps everyone make better things and forces you to be better. And if you suck, like if you're in music and you suck at it, like you're going to fail. But you're not going to fail because like somebody else is slightly better than you. You're going to fail because you suck. Mm-hmm. But if you're great, the other people in it just sort of make you greater, to help you succeed even more. I think there's more to that in startups than there is about. It's less like baseball and more like playing in an orchestra.
Mm-hmm. Let's. I want to talk about your business. I'm a premium member.
Thank you.
How's that going for you, and what does the future hold? I mean, clearly you're pretty large. I see you're building every time I'm driving down to Google on the side of the freeway. What's the head count at right now? And
320, I think.
320. Are you thinking IPO? Like, what's the outcome? Like, how do you?
Yeah, I mean.
Keep it private.
No, I think So the goal is 100-year startup.
But obviously your investors want liquidity
Yeah,
a
but
little bit sooner than that.
yes, but I think you got to decouple liquidity from exit, right? Like, okay, Evernote is my life's work. Evernote is our life's work. There is no exit strategy for your life's work. Like, if something is sufficiently epic that you want to spend your life doing it, why would you ever want to think about exit?
Sure, I don't mean exit like you leave the company. I'm
Right.
just talking
Well,
about like the next stages for.
Right. But like you can have lots of liquidity points without an exit.
Sure.
And so we've done secondary rounds. We've given early investors liquidity. We've given employees and founders some liquidity.
cool.
And the plan is to keep doing that. And then at some point go public. Although want to kind of delay that as much as possible. So that's 2-3 years down the road at the least.
Real quick before we go there, what's your take on liquidity for early founders? Because Snapchat today announced their founders took, or they didn't announce. The rumor is that their founders took 20 million personal liquidity. They haven't not a single cent of revenue yet. Like, what's your take there? When do you allow founders to cash out?
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's why would you ever? Who does it benefit to get into a situation where founders and employees and early investors are incented to exit, or like incented to, like they can't make any money until they sell or until
Right.
they IPO. Like, how does that help you make better decisions? Like, of course it's a good idea. Like, once something is, if it's worth something, then taking 5%, 10%, 20% off the table, it's great. I mean, it relieves a lot of pressure. It helps you make healthier decisions. It also like really makes you value the 90% that's left even more. Like, if you see what you just got for 10%, and you're like, oh, that was great. So now I can relax a little bit. But also, man, this other 90%, like it feels a lot more real. So I really think that,
Okay.
Within certain parameters.
Yeah.
Like if I was doing an A round investment or an angel investment, and like at the angel round, the founder was like, yeah, I want 50% off. That would be kind of weird. But what was the valuation that was rumored for Snapchat? It was like 800 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the, the other question is the valuation question, not so much
Right.
the liquidity question. But
Yeah.
not saying that it's not worth 800 million, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's a new service.
What price could you put on something? Anyway, sorry. I'm too old to fully appreciate it.
I am too, sadly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about security documents, some of my most sensitive data. I can't even tell you how happy I was when you added two-factor auth. That was like freaking me out for a long time. Have you been hacked?
Well, yeah, we had a breach that forced a full password reset a few months ago. And there's always
For everyone.
well, we forced it for everyone just because we couldn't. We said like it's always better to overreact. Like there wasn't any account information that was stolen. Like no one's Evernote got accessed, but we.
How did you detect that? What happened?
We have a security team that was kind of going through stuff, and we just saw abnormal activity, and traced it back and realized what had happened, and said, we took it was a really painful step for us to take, was to do an immediate password reset for every user, because it was sort of like hitting the hardware reset button on the business, and then hoping that it boots back up correctly. It was rough, because it was like when we did it, all Evernote usage went to 0, and then it has to come back up.
Right.
But that was more of like we felt like we didn't have to do it because the passwords are all hashed and salted and all that stuff, but we can't guarantee it, so we're better off just take the hit now and reset it. And have done a whole bunch of stuff since then to both visibly like two-factor auth and a few other security features that we added, but also a lot of stuff behind the scenes to do it. But security is a constant, it's a constant thing. There's kind of 3 parts to it. The first part is privacy, and that's actually the much more important part that I think a lot of people like. It's fun. It's more dramatic to focus on the hackers, but really the danger is the privacy angle. So the privacy stuff is great. For us, it's easy because our business model is keeping things private. Everything you put into Evernote is private, so we have no conflict with privacy. So for us, that's straightforward. Then there's a kind of disaster recovery. That's at least fun to work on. That's fun to plan, because you get to plan out the zombie apocalypse and
Right.
where your files are going to go, and you can kind of get into planning. It's expensive, but it's fun. It's fun to plan for it. It's not necessarily fun to implement it after the zombie apocalypse. And then the third thing is the unauthorized access hackers, and that just sucks. It's not fun to plan. It's just a constant everyday, tax that you just pay on making it a little bit better every day, and there's just no upside. So it's kind of a thankless part of the job, but it's part of our promise.
Two more quick questions. One, government stuff. A lot of stuff recently in the news about dealing with government access to documents. Like,
Right.
what's your stance on this, and has that happened to you? I mean, is it something where you're getting pings from the government to turn over documents?
It's never happened to us. I'm not sure. Like, all of that was wildly misreported initially anyway. It was just kind of a lot of crazy talk. But I'd never heard of Prism. I'd never heard of a thing like it where you can get blanket requests for information. There's obviously no backdoors, no access. Like that has never happened. We have procedures for law enforcement. So if there's like a, if there's a...
None of that's automated, it's all...
No, none of that is automated. It's all kind of one at a time. And it's law enforcement. It's actually never happened for intelligence. It's always for like, this person is on trial for some crime and there's a court order and all that kind of stuff. But that even there, that only happens a handful of times a year for us because we're not public. So we just we don't have, there's not a lot of visibility. Like everyone's for your private stuff.
Would you ever add encrypted documents at some point later in time?
Yeah, we have encryption in Evernote now. That's client side that we don't have access to. But right now you have to highlight a portion of a node and encrypt it. And we are working on super awesome. We're going to be releasing more stuff for encryption of both attachments and notes. The trade-off, of course, is so there's two ways to do client-side encryption. There's you can lie about it and say that you do it, but not really do it, which basically means that the keys to the decrypted are sitting on the servers next to the encrypted information.
Right.
Then we could say it's encrypted, but obviously the keys are right there,
Right.
so if someone gets them, they can decrypt it. Or you can do it for real. If you do it for real, then you as a company can never decrypt it without the user's help. The problem with that is, of course, that's the only way we would do it because we just wouldn't lie about it. But if you do it like that, then the things that you encrypt are much harder to find, right? Because we can't index it, we can't search it. Obviously, if it's encrypted, we can't crawl through it, we can't index it, can't.
You
do
could
all
index
kind
that
of stuff.
locally, though, right? And then just search it.
Yeah, but then you're sort of defeating a lot of the purpose of having it everywhere. So if you want to be super paranoid about encrypting everything, you're going to optimize for preventing unauthorized access, but you're going to really hurt yourself in terms of robustness and availability of your data.
Right.
When you really
Which might
need
be
it.
worth it for a few documents.
Exactly. And so that's the decision. So basically, we're going to let users pick which documents or even which sections of documents they want to really lock down and which ones they want to stay searchable. And that's some of that is already there, but more of it is coming by the end of the year. And the stuff that we're going to release, I'm going to go on the record right now. We are going to come out with something that when you use it, it's going to be the first time in your life that you've interacted with an encryption product that you're like, oh, this is so awesome. It's going to be the world's first super sexy encryption product. You're going to be like, I want me more of that encryption.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I will end on that because sexy encryption is a good note to end on. Thank you for coming out and doing this. Appreciate it.